Hi, it's Yvonne again, and I thought I would take you on a journey into the continuum of fear. Did you know that fear is not created equal? Meaning that there are different ways that our body addresses the increase of adrenaline in our system. And so it looks kind of like this. At the first sign of something going on that piques our attention, we would call it arousal. Don't worry, I'm not talking about anything to do with sex, but I'm talking about that little bit of adrenaline that peaks into your system, and we're going to call it arousal. Now, that means that while I'm talking to you, I might hear a bump or a sound in the other room, but it's certainly not enough to take my attention away from talking with you. But if that sound goes away, great, I return to my normal breathing, my normal heart rate, all is good. That's called homeostasis, when everything is at peace in my body. So if the sound doesn't go away and it begins to get louder, and that little bit of sound now turns into a bump, 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 and it's enough to really get my attention in a greater way, it's moved from arousal to anxiety. And anxiety creates this little bit of stress in my system that makes me more curious about what's going on. Now, if this were happening in my home, my two little Yorkies would do this. It would be enough that they would be thinking and listening in another direction while they're watching me. This would be what anxiety does in our body. If it goes away, great. We return to our sense of peace and we're good. But if it doesn't, then the next level of adrenaline peeking into our system, we could call that fear. And fear is that decisive place that we're trying to decide, am I going to stay? Am I going to grab my stuff and get out of here? And that's because that noise that we were listening to that went from a bump to a bump, 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 now we can identify that that's actually a truck outside the building. And the sound is getting louder and louder, and I actually can hear the truck bump up against the building. And so I'm in that place of trying to decide, am I going to be safe or am I not? The sound is loud. I might look around at my people in the room and say, hey, what are you thinking? Do you think we should get out of here? If it subsides, great. We take a big exhale and we move back to our steady place of homeostasis. But what if it doesn't go away? And now that truck that was hitting against the building is louder and louder, and as I look over, I see the sheetrock begin to crumble. It's possible in that moment that I quickly have moved from arousal to anxiety to fear to out-and-out terror. And terror is when I know that I'm not going to be okay. It's where I begin to see the building crashing and the truck comes in, and I know in that moment that I'm not going to be okay. But what if it stops right there? The sirens come, the tow truck comes, pulls the truck back out of the building. We actually were not injured in any way. All of us in that room would be going, oh my gosh, and we will talk about it for a long time. Do you remember when we were making that recording that truck came through the building and we didn't know what to do? It was actually a trauma bonding experience, because we would have been the only ones that would have been here and now when that happened. And so even if the experience goes away and the adrenaline begins to subside, we will now have a memory that will actually bind us together because of that experience. So that's how arousal, anxiety, fear, and terror begin to work in our body. After terror, or alongside terror, can become what we call primary dissociation. And primary dissociation is where there's a split with the cognitive connection with what's happened. It looks kind of like this. We see the truck, we hear the truck coming in, and we have that moment that later we think, I just didn't know what to do. I had a brain freeze. My mind could not make a decision one way or the other. It was primary dissociation, where we had a cognitive split in the ability to make a decision. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just simply the way that our body adapted to that trauma that we were experiencing. Another level of dissociation could be secondary dissociation, where there's actually a split with the human body. And what that means is that our body actually does not feel the impact or take the sensation of feelings can be missing, even though there's still a cognitive connection with what happened. And then obviously there can be another level of dissociation where there's actually a split with the human spirit. Most people that I work with in trauma counseling or in addiction have had certain levels of trauma that the body continues to stay in that sense of anxiety or arousal or even fear. And then there's also levels of dissociation. Did you know that addiction oftentimes mimics levels of dissociation when we did not have a way to cognitively mitigate or to connect with what happened? So when we're working with trauma, we want to understand that the body experiences those, how those neurochemicals pass through our brain, our body, we all experience that in a little different way. And so in trauma work, it's not only working with the emotional way that we experience what happened, but it's also working with the body and helping the body to regain a sense of safety, to be at that place of peace again, so that we're back at that place of homeostasis. Thank you so much for watching again today, and I hope to talk to you soon.